Okay, so we're going to jump into how this all works. So for reference, basically I'm going to be parroting the rules page on our GameJolt posting. So if you haven't been to the GameJolt site, if you haven't registered yet and you're just here watching this, then go to the GameJolt site. It's jams.gamejolt.io/Colorado or CO Lottery Game Jam. So if you go to that site, it's actually all over the emails you've been getting. It's all over the communication. So we can post that in the chat as well. One of our team will post that for you. But I'm going to be kind of reviewing the rules and kind of how it works. So essentially it kind of goes like this. First off, in order to participate and in order to qualify for a prize, you have to be registered and you have to accept the terms and rules of the registration. Okay, so that's number one. So to do that, just go to the GameJolt page and you can do it right from there. Now, when submitting your game via GameJolt, and you're going to be submitting your game via GameJolt, so don't think we don't have a dev post, we don't have a different submission system. It's going to be through GameJolt. And what you're going to do is you're going to hashtag your project with hashtag CO Lottery Game Jam in your description. Now, what that does is the GameJolt platform identifies your project as a submission for the Game Jam by that hashtag. So that's really important to get that right. And we'll be reminding everybody of this probably 10 times throughout the week, just so that we make sure that you get your submissions in, because we don't want to miss any really good projects. Now, in addition, you want to include a GitHub code repository link. So like include your GitHub. You know, some of the reviewers will be reviewing your game code. We do need to make sure that, like, you know, everything is you know, sort of reasonable there. There's not a lot we're looking for specifically, except that, you know, because of the terms of the competition, we do have to ensure that that you do actually have the code in your repository, and then there's some representations that you've made in the agreement and the waiver. You can use existing tools, engines, languages, and programming libraries to develop your game. Okay, so this isn't something that we expect you to kind of reinvent the wheel, so to speak. We do expect even open source code to being used. I mean, please notate the areas where you own the code and where you don't. That's really important for us to understand. Open source libraries are okay to use, but if you're using anything that's licensed that you don't have permission to use, that becomes problematic. So just keep in mind that you want to use programs that you have license to use and or that are open source libraries. You can use pre-made music and sound assets. So again, assuming you have permission to use them. Again, copyrights can be interesting in this world, so just make sure any music that you're using, you either have license or permission to use it, or if it's original, of course, then it's yours to use. Collaborations and group efforts are welcome. Now, we do not have a cap or a limit on team size. Now, we do suggest the best optimal team size is usually 3 to 5. Usually when you get more than that, it's a little too many cooks in the kitchen sometimes, and then a lot of times we see people wanting to compete with one person. In the ETHDenver rules, we do not allow that, but for the Colorado Game Jam, the Lottery Game Jam, we do allow solo submissions. We don't want to eliminate anybody and their creativity based on their inability to find a team partner. There might be something else we can help you with later on if you want to find a team partner, or, you know, something like that, but don't feel you have to go out and get a team partner for this particular exercise. You are not allowed to have more than one submission. So as much as you might want to submit 3 or 4 projects, any one person can only be on one team. Any one project can only submit one team. Any one team can only submit one project. So just bear in mind that you can only compete once, you can only win once. So you can't submit 3 or 4 projects hoping to win first, second, and third. It's really one submission, one person, one submission. You've got to own the IP. All right. Now, again, this goes back to permission and code. Like, you know, you can't use somebody else's IP. You can't copy or knock off something. For example, in the lottery world, bingo is a trademarked thing. So if you go and build a open source bingo game, you might have some IP problems there because you don't own the name. So we suggest that you really consider what you're building and whether or not there might be trademark issues, because it is important to make sure that you've got permission to use everything that you're using. Now, just as a telegraph, if you win and the lottery is going to implement your game possibly into the world of their game offerings, they can't be building something that's got an IP infringement or a problem or something like that. So this is just really making it easier for you and for them. Now, the judges will be reviewing some of that. I mean, of course, they're not going to have the time to look at everything, but if there's something obvious, they're going to review it and see if whether or not you've got the IP permission to do that. So please just bear in mind that that's really important. You can add images and descriptions to your GameJolt page anytime. So you can start your submission and your project, descriptions anytime you want. It's when you hit that hashtag that actually submits it to the project queue. So nobody will really know or see it until you do that, but you can build it anytime you want. Now, one best practice would be to do that like as you go. I wouldn't suggest trying to cram this like Sunday evening at 9 o'clock into 3 hours. You've got literally from now until next Sunday at midnight to do this. So like just do it in increments. I mean, a lot of us have full-time day jobs. Like, so every night there's going to be the office hours from 4 to 5 p.m. So that will be happening in our, we'll be distributing Zoom links for each discipline that's available, as well as the Discord channels. So please do this stuff incrementally. It's probably the best way to have the best submissions. All right, so the game type. We do on the rules page have an example of what a monitor game is, but essentially you've got to think about this like, well, let me back up. One thing about this. Some people have said, well, why are you guys just limiting it to the monitor games? Why don't we just do any kind of game? And it's like a little foreshadowing here. We're gonna do that, but we want to make sure that the lottery really gets its core objectives hit this time. So think about when you're in a restaurant or, like a Buffalo Wild Wings or something, and you're playing those little monitor games that come there. You're kind of sitting at your table waiting for your food. And that's kind of the game experience you're kind of thinking of. This is sort of a casual experience. It's something that's sort of rapid fire. You want to make sure that you think about that engagement when it comes to the game players. And the sky's the limit. Now, Colorado has paved the way for Keno to be available in this setting next year. So what this is really about is finding a game that pairs well with that experience to really, drive engagement, make it more fun and exciting, make it more like where people want to play it, whether that's creating, visibility and transparency into the gaming system, or it's just a really cool game that pairs with it. We're not trying to stifle creativity at all. So the canvas is pretty much blank aside from those considerations, okay? Now it's gotta be a game of chance though. So if your games are cool, there's a ton of type of games, but in the lottery system, we're talking about a game of chance where the player has a known risk of losing an investment of sorts or some level of economics, but they also have that big upside in return. So just think about that as you're doing that. The target payout is 65%. So again, these targets are all in the GameJam rules. So if you want to take a look at these as you're going, the duration is about 2 to 4 minutes of engagement, but we cannot have anything that's violent, nothing that describes sexuality, nothing with minors, things like that. So you pretty much can build whatever you want, but there are some guardrails that we have to put on this because, again, this is a publicly sponsored and supported game effort. Players have to be 18 years or older. And let's see, the GameJolt deadline is midnight on Sunday, August 9th. So you've got to have your hashtag submitted by then. The choreography for this after that will be the lottery representatives, the ETHDenver representatives, and the other Web3 participants. The judges will be reviewing these basically all day on Monday. And then we will have a closing ceremonies announced here shortly, if we haven't already done it, which I think we have, for Monday evening, where we will host demos and announce the winners and possibly what's next for the GameJam series. Excuse me, I've got my sister's cat meowing in my back pocket right here. we will be, the top 3 winners of the Game Jam will have their projects move into the next stage. Now, let's be clear about what actually happens here. So we've had a lot of questions about this. We cannot, unfortunately, guarantee that your project will be a part of the Colorado Gaming and the lottery system. But they will move into a consumer testing phase, like a player testing phase and research phase to evaluate the real sort of, chops that these games might have. Now, it's entirely plausible, and the goal is to do that. So don't think that this is just a fishing expedition. There is absolutely intention of doing it, but there are some processes that have to happen in order for that to go down over a long period, or over a little bit longer period of time than just immediately. All right. All right. One thing about this, ETHDenver, everybody knows that we are an inclusive organization. So be cool. Hey, you too. So racism, sexism, misogynistic, talking points, just be respectful of those around you. In the virtual world, it's a little bit easier because we're not just rubbing elbows all the time, but any sort of prejudice of any kind, any sort of just unnecessary banter will not be tolerated. If we do have any issues with that, it is part of your agreement, and it is part of the tools or the rules and waiver. If you do violate them, then you will be cordially asked to leave the event, and you will not qualify any longer for prizes or anything like that. So we really want to make sure that this event is accessible to everyone, and that everyone has the ability to share openly and creatively and build and be very productive about their contribution. And we expect that as just a basic set of decorum from everybody that participates in the Game Jam.